Day and night and day, the living creatures give their praise to Him who lives eternally. They never cease from saying, Holy, holy is Yahweh Almighty, worthy, worthy to receive all glory.
Well, hello and welcome to Walking in the Word. My name is Chelle Wagner, and I'm so glad that you've come to join me today, whether it is live for the live presentation or if you're going to be watching this in the future. I welcome you, and I pray that this message is a blessing in your life. So I have been studying the book of Amos for quite some time now, and it surprised me how long it took me to really put this presentation together because, I just didn't think it would be quite as complicated as it has been, but I've learned a lot. And I hope that by making this presentation that you will be able to hear a message within the message for yourself from Yah for your life. And so with that, let me go ahead and add my PowerPoint to the screen. So a long time ago, I was in motorcycle ministry, and it was in the 90s, and there were popular bumper stickers inside of Christian bookstores that said objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. And so, it would have a picture of what everybody thinks Jesus looks like, right, on it, that Jesus was coming sooner than we thought is what the message was. And I think that message was right, but I also had a dream of a storm when I was riding a motorcycle, and this dream has never left me. I knew it was Yah given me this dream. In it was my job. I could see there was clear skies in front of me. There was a glorious place I was headed to, but there was a storm and of a magnificent proportion that was on my tail, right? And I had a passenger with me, and this passenger was very afraid of the storm, and they could feel the effects, but they couldn't see what I could see. They didn't have the rear view mirror look, and so this passenger was riding on my motorcycle with me, and they would begin to beat me on the back, wanting me to stop because they were afraid of the ride that we were on. And I would stop, and I would have to say, listen, it's okay. Just stay on the motorcycle with me, and it's going to be all right. We'll make it to our destination. But it happened over and over. And finally, in the dream, then I did arrive at the place that I knew Yah had wanted me to arrive at. But anyway, this whole thing, studying Amos, has reminded me of that dream and my experience in that. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, so what is this taking place about Amos? Amos is all about a prophecy that Assyria is getting ready to just decimate the northern kingdom. Okay, so I wanted to start here. So this was the Assyrian Empire. They had become a superpower of the world during this time period of taking over the northern kingdom and their attacks on the southern kingdom. And they had a huge amount of territory. However, they were destined to be destroyed themselves not long after their conquest, before the kingdom of Judah was decimated. So before the southern kingdom is done away with by Babylon. So Assyria was located in the northern part of Mesopotamia, which corresponds to most parts of modern day Iraq, as well as parts of Iran, Kuwait, Syria, and Turkey, Who are the Assyrians today? The Assyrians of today number more than 5 million and are the direct descendants of the ancient Assyrian and Babylonian empires. Okay. And like every other country on earth, those lands contain a mixed multitude as well, right? All right. So Allison Inn's 1963 short history of espionage described a sleeper agent as one inserted into an unsuspecting community in time of peace to wreak destruction with the onset of war. In fact, during the Cold War, the Soviet Union had sleeper agents stationed in Washington, D.C., ready to cut off the city's electricity in the event of an outbreak in hostilities. Sleeper agents remain dormant or inactive until the time to act, doing no other espionage work. So in looking at this is part of our view of studying Amos is understanding. I'm looking at the parallels because prophecy unfolds, right? So I'm looking at the parallels between what was happening to the northern kingdom of Israel and what's happening in the world today, and especially in the country that I live in. So I just wanted to kind of bring up this subject, and we'll dive a little deeper into this. So we can see right now what's happening in our country. I believe that we are under great attack from sleeper cells at the moment. Okay, we've seen attacks on our substations. We've seen attacks on our on the trains and things of this nature lately, right? So these sleeper agents, they look like they've been, assimilated into the culture, but yet their heart has never left their homeland, and they only have allegiance to that particular homeland. So destroying where they currently live, they see themselves as foreigners and bent on getting vengeance over their enemy, which is the land that they have become a sleeper agent in. And I believe that we are going through that right now. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up as a way to begin to look at some of this and maybe think about it, and as we go through the presentation. All right, so let's get started. Amos and the America comparison. A few notes from the first chapter of Brad Scott, The Principle of the Seed. So I wanted to just read this directly out of there. It says, historically, plunging morals and values have preceded the fall of every great nation that once dominated the earth. These are not insignificant times. Many of our young people today have grown up in a world in which the great nation to the north of Israel is Russia. From Nikita Khrushchev in the 50s, which is represented there with that Time magazine cover, right, to Mikhail Gorbachev in the 80s. And if you notice this picture of Mikhail Gorbachev, he has a very distinctive birthmark. That's how you can kind of recognize him there. In the 80s, there has been a consistent tone to many of their speeches and writings concerning the United States. The presentations may be different, but the bottom line was consistent. The United States of America is going to fall. America will collapse. We will not send a single missile or a single soldier. She will implode because of her immorality. America leads the world in the distribution and consumption of pornography. Now we have progressed to drag time story hour and pornography filling the libraries of our public schools. Now I've got a YouTube video link here, and I'll put it in the description when I'm done with this. And it's well worth watching. There's a young boy here who is telling his story about what he found in his public school library and how he checked the book out and the librarian wanted to give him even more. And it was an extremely pornographic story in a middle school. And he took it home to his dad, and then they brought it to a school board meeting, and he began to read this book at the school board meeting. It's really quite an incredible video, and I will link it in the description. Also, here is an article from one of my favorite authors, Michael Snyder of themostimportantnews.com. He's been a guest on my show several times, and I always enjoy doing interviews with him. But he's talking about why is every Walmart in the entire city of Portland being permanently shut down, which is scheduled to happen by the end of this month. And today is March 15th. Of 2023. And so this is going on right now. And he's talking about it. It's because the illegal drug consumption has turned people into massive thieves in this area, and they can't stop the shoplifting, and they've done away with all the police force. So, and that they've changed the laws that nobody's going to be prosecuted. So Walmart's pulling out. They're tired of everybody just coming in and stealing all their stuff. And so they're like, well, fine, we'll just pull out, right? America is also, it's number one in illegal drug consumption and number one in legal drug consumption. Pharmakia, sorcery. Look at this logo for Novo Nordisk. And can you see that this is the same bull of Ephraim that Jeroboam set up in the city of Bethel and the city of Dan? It's the same thing. That's what their logo is, right? So it kind of tells you where that's at in this country. We lead the way in illness because our healthcare system and the consuming of legal drugs. Our state of health is pitiful. We're on a hamster wheel of degenerating health from the moment babies come out of the womb. They are injected with a constant round of poisonous substances. We're number one in psychological treatment, drug treatment, and mental hospitals, pumping Americans full of antipsychotic drugs to help them get through a day. We lead the world in suicide, particularly our youth under the age of 18. We are a violent, murderous nation. Road rage and random acts of violence are normal. We're number one in sex crimes, including crimes against children and sex trafficking. We lead the way with churches, seminaries, revivals, missionaries, gospel groups, Christian rock stars, and purpose-driven congregations and seeker-friendly churches. It doesn't seem like that would be on the same list, but it certainly is. All right. So let's now get into Amos with those thoughts in mind and looking at the unfolding of prophecy and the comparison. So here's a word picture of Amos. We can see it starts with an ayin, a mem, a vav, and a samach. Okay. So Amos means he sees the chaos that is connected to a thorn in the side, right? And Amos is able to see it. His name, it's a burden, right? That thorn is a burden. And so Amos's name means a burden. He was a prophet of Yah who prophesied in the northern kingdom, he was a native of Tekoa in Yehuda near Bethlehem. So he came in and prophesied to the northern kingdom, but he was from the southern kingdom. Okay. So he's a native of Tekoa and Yehuda near Bethlehem and a shepherd by trade, an author of the prophetic book that is by his name. H6006 is the root word for his name. And the root word meaning of the name means to be loaded with a heavy burden. When you look in the etymological dictionary, biblical Hebrew, you see the root word as the ayin, the mem, and the samach. Okay, so Psalm 68:19 is a good way to see what this root word means. Blessed be Adonai, who daily loads us with benefits, even the L of our Yeshua. Okay, so that's what it means. It means to be loaded. So this prophet, sometimes, I would say every time someone has a prophetic gifting, and that is a gifting from Yah, it is a burden. It's not really something that makes you popular. It's not really something that makes everybody want to flock to what you've got to say. Most of the time, it makes people run away from you because you can see things that people would rather you not see. And that is very hard on their souls if they like the critters that are hanging onto them. Okay. Amos is from Tekoa, which means stockade. It is described as a town in the hill country of Judah near Hebron, built by King Rehoboam of Judah, birthplace of Amos. Amos was a shepherd from Yehuda, a profession that is away from the noise and the clatter of city life, which allows a man to think in an uninterrupted manner. He is given a heavy message for the northern kingdom. So in the book, An Introduction to the Old Testament and its Study by Robert L. Cate on page 299, it says, being a rural person did not make Amos the country bumpkin some people have portrayed him as being. He was quite aware of the events going on in his world, both in Judah and in neighboring Israel, and also knew of events in the nations which surrounded his land. Further, he was quite aware of the history of many of these people. Tekoa was in that region of Judah near the territory of Edom. Edom was one of the centers of the wisdom movement in the ancient Near East. Amos's preaching indicates that he was quite familiar with that wisdom movement and easily could have been classed as a wise man himself, right? Okay, so let's take a look at what that was. Many commentators have assumed that his background precludes personal wisdom. Therefore, anything in his book which sounds like a product of ancient wisdom had to have come from someone else as a later addition to the book. Hans W. Wolf has pointed out that Amos's natural background would have made it quite easy for him to be familiar with Edomite wisdom. No adequate reason any longer exists for denying wisdom-sounding material to the prophet from Tekoa. The wisdom movement then was probably much as it is today, an endless search for the latest and most impressive revelation concerning all the hidden aspects and secret knowledge in the scriptures. That is a big movement today. All right, so there is a vast difference in motive between a yada, intimate relationship that is filled with insight and revelation due to a close relationship with the creator of all, and a lust for knowledge and information that gives you some kind of edge in your personal quest for notoriety. You know, here is a popular belief, and I'm not saying this is my belief. I'm saying that this picture that I've put on this slide is what would be popular in today's culture. And it says it's this beautiful picture with a reflective mountain view, right? All in the purples and the like almost like colors of the aurora borealis type thing, you know, the purples and the pinks and the, you know, the esoteric stuff. And this saying is the quest for knowledge and wisdom is true connection to divinity. Well, it's not the divine nature of the creator that they are seeking. They're looking for the divinity of like Mother Gaia and the goddesses, and this would be an example of Edomite wisdom that we're seeing in today's culture. Okay, when you see this kind of stuff, and it looks so pretty and it looks so flowy and it looks, you know, like this wonderful thing, but this is not a quest for true knowledge and wisdom. This is knowledge and wisdom coming from a demonic source, okay, not from the creator. So now let's look at the way that the book of Amos starts. The way the book starts draws in his target audience, Yisrael, because he's addressing the problems of all the nations that are near them, their enemies. I would imagine they were cheering his message until the script flips, and then he is pointing out their sins about midway through chapter 2 until the end of the book. And that's really how it is with the prophetic. People will cheer you on until you press the sore spot where their boil is, right? And you start pressing on their boil, and buddy, suddenly they don't like your message or you anymore, right? This approach shows Amos to be an oratory master who had an abundance of courage. There are several examples of threats to his life because of his message. The threat of the high priest in Bethel and the implied threat of Jeroboam II. You'll see that if you listen to the reading through of the book, which is scheduled to play later today. Also, being from Yehuda himself, his entire message was to a hostile audience of the kingdom of Ephraim, or the northern kingdom, the stronghold capital city of Samaria, also known as Shomron in the Hebrew. He faced the very real prospect of becoming a martyr for his message, because that's what the prophetic does in people when you press on their sore spots and they don't want to hear this message. And especially if, as in Amos's case, you're dealing with someone who has any kind of power or authority. You're just dealing with regular people and you've got a prophetic gift and you press on it. Well, they're going to do what they can to sabotage you and hurt you. But if you're in the position of a national prophet, the kings in charge, the kings of the earth, they're going to want to take your head off. And it's not that other people don't want to take your head off. They just don't have that power. All right. And the kings of the earth didn't have it with Amos either, right? Because it's Yah who decides on our every breath. So he was not a member of the prophetic guild of the day, right? He wasn't part of the school of the prophets. And we see that in today's culture, right? As if there were some school or some course that you could take that would give you a prophetic gifting of Yah and that Yada relationship with the creator of the universe, right? And would give you some kind of prophetic insight by going to their school. So these groups associated themselves with a leader. There's nothing new being done, right? This was being done in Amos's day. So these groups associated themselves with a leader to develop the skill set necessary to be recognized, getting that sheet of paper, as an authorized prophet. Your message had to line up with the accepted messaging of the day to be in the club. Does it sound familiar? Amos clearly states that he had been called by Yahweh as his voice to the nation of Israel. He was given one of the most significant messages contained in the Tanakh: the Torah, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and Ketuvim. Right? That's what this is. The Tanakh is the Torah, the Nevi'im. Right? The T stands for Torah. The N stands for Nevi'im, which means prophets. And the K, which would be more like a K, stands for the Ketuvims, which is the writings. That's what Tanakh means. As an effort of the Most High El Elyon to reach his rebellious people. Right? Okay. So the time of the book is based on three markers. Uzziah was the king of Yehuda. Jeroboam II was the king of Israel, and it was 2 years prior to what has been called an earthquake in English. So this happened approximately 767 BC. Okay, so this is a good 40 years before Assyria was going to totally destroy the northern kingdom and take them captive, and they would be no more. A little more than 40 years, almost 45 years prior. Okay, so looking at this word earthquake for a moment, it is Ra-ash. Okay, so what do we know about the word Ra? We know the word Ra is evil. Okay, and then we know that's got a shin on the end, so we've got destruction. So we're looking at the destruction of the prince. And who is it? The prince. We've got this all-seeing eye in the middle. So that's an interesting thing, that it's like, right here in this word picture. I'm going to have to keep looking at that one. When you're trying to figure out word pictures, you're looking, it's always in this chiastic pattern. You've got what's on the right, you've got what's on the left, and then you've got the heart of the matter. So we see the heart of the matter is this eyeball, right? This ayin, right? This sight. We see this as a symbol in Egypt. It's on our dollar bill, so we know where we're at, on top of the pyramid, right? I mean, if there's any question about who rules the United States of America, just look at your money. It's on there. Right? So the Brown Driver Briggs says that this word means a quaking, a rattling, and a shaking. Okay. So, earthquake seems very appropriate. The thing is, I've been looking and looking and looking through all the history, and I can't find what would have been considered such a monumental earthquake in any of the history of the nation. So I can't pinpoint what this is talking about or what earthquake this would have been referring to in the book of Amos. But certainly there was a shaking that came. Okay, Amos 1, chapter 1, verse 2. It says, and he said, Yahweh will roar from Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the habitations of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. Okay, so most of the time during this presentation, I will be reading from the Sefer, and I was looking to see if I had it near me, but I don't. That's at sefer.net. It's available on eSword as a download, and there at sefer.net, there is a app for the phone that you can get it there, and you can also purchase a hard copy there. Okay, or there's a free copy on eSword. So looking at this Vagiyash, there's a connection to a Torah portion here, and in fact, in the book of Amos, I saw 3 connections to Torah portions. So the first one, Vayigash, came near, Nagash. Okay, so that it is a Shin, a Gimel, and a Noon. It is in Genesis 44:18 through 47:27. And here's the portion that I wanted to share out of that. It has to deal with Joseph and his brethren. It says, and Joseph said unto his brethren and unto his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh and say unto him, my brethren in my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. And the men are shepherds, for their trade has been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And it shall come to pass when Pharaoh shall call you and shall say, what is your occupation? That ye shall say, your servant's trade has been about cattle from our youth, even until now, both we and also our fathers, that ye may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination unto the Mitzrayim. So right there in Amos's knowing what his profession was, how the world, how Egypt would just hate him for that very profession. Okay. So then it goes on in Amos to where it begins to list the enemies, right? The enemies of his people. It says 6 enemies of his people are listed before he addresses Yehuda and Israel. Judgment on Damascus, Syria for cruelty. Judgment on Gaza, Philistia for treachery. Judgment on Tyre and Phoenicia for covenant breaking. The judgment on Edom was for disloyalty. The judgment on Ammon was for the atrocities they committed. Judgment on Moab was for sacrilege. Judgment on Yehuda, right? So we've got, it says often in Proverbs you'll see, 6 things that Yah hates, and the 7th is an abomination unto him. And so in this, by the time we get to 7, he's dealing with his people. So I listed it as 7a and 7b, even though this is mainly going to deal with Yasharel. Yehuda is also involved in it, right? It is the whole house. Okay, so judgment on Yehuda, a brief message of coming destruction is given, but then the judgment on Israel is the main message, and the full recounting of their sinful behavior is given along with an entire description of the judgment that they are going to endure. Okay, so let me see. I'm trying to decide if I want to break this message into parts. I know it can get very long and people have a hard time listening to something that is so long. So I think I will end this one and come back and do part 2. Okay. So thank you for joining me for right now. I'm going to go ahead and end this one, and then I will be back with part 2 of the message. Shalom.
Day and night and day, the living creatures give their praise. To him who lives eternally, they never cease from saying, Holy, holy is Yahweh.